Greetings. Really nice to be here. Um, I'm going to start on the 6th of April, 1819. An illegal French slave ship called Laradio set sail from Bonny on the West African coast to Guadeloupe. 2 weeks into the journey, an outbreak, disease spread among the 22 crew and 162 enslaved people. The disease rendered practically everyone on board temporarily or permanently blind. This tragedy did not, however, prevent profit from trumping humanity. The captain did not want the expense of carrying unsaleable enslaved people. However, he also knew that he could not make an insurance claim against those blind enslaved people unless he did something drastic. So, as he neared Guadeloupe, he ordered his crew to throw 36 permanently blind captives into the sea to drown. In many of her pieces, Turner Prize-winning visual artist Lubena Himid captures these atrocities. In Himid's paintings, she reflects on how history is living today. She presents unstable situations, imagined figures in her scenes, and this is not history shown directly. But Himid, in her work, often asks, what will I learn about myself here? What would I do in this situation? How much power can I have, and what will I do with it? What difference can I make? What will you do different when you leave the gallery? I invite everyone here today to ask yourselves the same questions. We know that the economy is embedded in a system in which wealth, power, and access has been decided upon racial lines. The era of empire, colonization, and slavery still lives over all of us. Industrial capitalism was grounded in colonialism and slavery. The Industrial Revolution and Europe's infrastructure grew from this point where it was heavily reliant on cotton and sugar grown on the land stolen from indigenous Americans, with productions dependent on slave trade of Africans. Slavery meant that the UK gained access to free labor in its colonies in the Caribbean, in India, and in the Americas and beyond. In its colonies, primary commodities were produced at very suppressed prices, and the sales of these primary commodities brought huge profits, and that profit margin is what created the capital sums for the emergence of capitalism. The underdevelopment of geopolitical South was an intentional consequence of Europe's quest for supremacy on the globe. I think it's incredibly important that we always remember this, because it very much underpins our systems of oppression that we see today. The end of slavery in the UK did not bring any reward for those enslaved people. We know that 46,000 slavers received £20 million in compensation, equivalent of £2.4 billion today, after the abolition of slavery. This had been the largest government payout until the 2008 banking crisis. This debt was not paid off until 2015, which means that for many people, their taxes were contributing to this debt. During a period when African, Asian, and Caribbean nations were gaining independence, the geopolitical North continued to plunder money from the geopolitical South. Over $160 trillion has been plundered since 1960. And still $2.2 trillion are plundered each year, which could end extreme global poverty 15 times over. Freedom has always come at a cost. And the attitude that we often see from many people, many nations, that it wasn't me attitude, or others were worse, just won't wash. I often say nowadays that philanthropy ends up being a bit like the good cop to capitalism's bad cop, or maybe the private sector or the market's bad cop. However you want to see it, we all exist in this system of oppression. And we all exist in a system which fundamentally disenfranchises and causes huge disparities along racial lines. Let's be clear, how does this play into the DNA of philanthropy? We know that in the UK, only 5% of charitable trust funding goes to organizations led by racially minoritized people. And of that money, we know that 9% goes towards campaigning, 3% towards research and policy, and only 3% towards capacity building. We know that only 0.3% of funding in the UK, for example, goes towards community organising. And we also know that Black feminist movements globally receive somewhere between 0.1 and 0.35% of annual grant dollars from foundations. These disparities live in philanthropy today. But I want us to move beyond the direct links to slavery and the pain frame that we have seen since the lynching of George Floyd. Like the statues we see often across Europe, like philanthropy, these are symbols that mask atrocities so deep and invisibilizes and erases pretty much all of the people, like those 36 drowned people on Laradio. We exist in a system where we bow to middle-class confidence, yet we distrust working-class ambitions as if the former has validity more than the latter. So I come here today to speak of what if, and the what if for me that says, what if philanthropy was centered on those that I have proven resilient to all of these atrocities over the years? For me, I come from a Jamaican family. My mum and dad are Jamaican, and they are part of the Windrush generation that came over from Jamaica in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. When we came over to this country, we were heavily, as Black people, discriminated against in every single sphere, from health to housing, education to the banking system. We couldn't get money, we couldn't get into houses, and we had to live in slum areas and work several jobs in order just to survive. But we had this system, and the system that we had was called the partner system, which means partner. It's a partnership. And it's a partnership for people to save collectively. And what it would be is a group of people from Caribbean background would pool their money together by handing over a set amount of money each week or each month. The set amount is called a hand, and the person who organizes the partner and collects the money is called a banker. And the banker hands over the contributions in a week or a month, which is called the draw, to the person whose turn it is to get paid. We know that from this partner system, the Hornsey Cooperative Credit Union, arguably the first credit union in the UK, was started as a result of the partner system. On its 50th anniversary in 2013, there were at that point 371 credit unions that had benefited over 1.3 million people. But the thing that I go back to is the partner system helped lots of Caribbean people become economically stable, but it was the principles that underpinned it that is really important. So for one, it was a generative partnership. There was no hierarchy. Everyone shared the risks and rewards. There was trust. Everyone was in the same boat. It was about self-determination. We built our own power so we could determine our own destiny. This was about services pending structural reform. We created alternative systems to those that had rejected us, serving our community's immediate needs with a view to supplanting discriminatory practices. Sacrifice. Change does not come without sacrifice. Each partner gives up money but must be patient until it's their turn to get theirs. Community. Care. Characterized by need, shared experiences, care, and the desire that no one is left behind. Racial justice. We recognized institutional racism and sought a practice that was not discriminatory, but would enable other communities to build their own infrastructure. Emergent. It was adaptive to the needs and culture of the people. Flexibility. We recognized things can get messy, but we understood that change rarely comes without strain. Trust in the equitable process. You may not get your money for a long time, but you will need the patience, but you will benefit when it is your turn. And solidarity. This is not based on money, but collectivism. It's beautiful, right? These are very beautiful principles. And if any grant maker, any funder, any social investor, anyone that is involved in the transaction of giving money towards good causes would turn around and say, these are our values, you would be proud. We do see some examples of this today. So if you look at the Resourcing Racial Justice Fund, for example, which is where the Percy Foundation gave money to a number of Black and brown activists who were able to raise additional funds, but were able to administer that money to racial justice causes on their own terms, without that level of hierarchy or other administration. It was done on their terms. The Edge Fund, which for years as a participatory grant maker, before participatory grant making came to vogue, were early supporters of some of the best and most activist movements, from the Ubele Initiative to Black Lives Matter UK to Sisters Uncut, who were all at the forefront of some of the best moves that we have seen over the last 2 years in terms of activism in the UK. And Project Talowa, which is just being developed for global majority women by global majority women, led by Mara I. Larasai. We have these examples today. But we do need to fundamentally shift our mindset from giving to giving back. And we do need to look at the principles of Pardner to start looking at how we rebalance power. We need to stand with people and those that are on the front line of harm. We need to trust in the most impacted communities to determine their own destiny, and heed the ideas, innovations, and the joy generated in underserved communities. We need to center the anti-racist and intersectional approaches of Black women and support the liberatory and alternative visions that are better than our capitalist world. At 10 years' time, we take philanthropists on a learning journey of honest reflection and radical action to dismantle harmful practices and resource racial and economic justice with care and confidence. With honest reflection, we talk about interrogating wealth and unlearning harmful practices. Radical action, investing in community wealth building, Black and brown-led funds, movement building, and the things that really affect systemic change. We stand for the redistribution of wealth, rebalancing power, and doing this through a reparative lens. But more than anything, we stand by anyone that ensures that no one is disposable. We believe that everyone has the right to liberty, safety, choice, and care. And we believe that the only way that we need to change these things is by rebalancing a lot of that power. I'm going to end by a final quote from Arundhati Roy in 2020. She said, "Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through it lightly, with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it." So I go back to the beginning. What will you learn about yourself here? What would you do different in this situation? How much power can you have and what will you do with it? What difference can you make? And what will you do that is different when you leave this conference? More than anything, I ask you, are you ready to imagine another world?